this is William Tincup. You're listening and watching the You Should Know podcast. And today we're talking with Meg Wilson from Sterling. And our topic today is the role of identity verification in hiring. So we're going to start there, but Meg's going to take us on an odyssey and we're just going to follow her around. Meg, would you do us a favor and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Meg Wilson, Chief Product Officer at Sterling. I've been with Sterling for about 3.5 years now. Previous to Sterling, I was with SAP for almost 11 years.
Oh,
Previous
wow.
to that, I was with I basically grew up in the human capital management space. I was with Authoria, I was with Kronos, Deploy Solutions, then spent a good amount of time at SAP SuccessFactors.
When were you
as well.
When were you at Deploy?
Oh my gosh. I think it was 100 years ago. Yeah. Very, very long time ago, right before Kronos acquired them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was Sham Sal still there?
Oh, yeah.
So we worked with Sham. We did a lot of the outsourced marketing back then.
Okay.
And your CEO, she was amazing. I can't remember her name right now, but she was in a marketing meeting with us at one point.
Uh-huh.
And Sham had all of his team there. We had all the agency there. Well, small part of the agency there, so it was a lot of people in one room. And she was there. We were rebranding something, and I was quiet, which I'm never quiet. So she asked me. Do you remember what was her name?
I can't remember. Too.
Yeah, her father did like AMs. He was a big shot in Boston.
Yeah.
Made a lot of money. I can't remember anyhow. Well, she looked at me and she goes, "William, you're being quiet. What's going on?" I said, "Well, I'm just wondering why you're in this fucking room." She looks at me and she goes, "What?" I said, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just figuring you have CEO shit to do. Like, why are you in this room? Your entire marketing team's here. Your CMO is brilliant. We have all of our team here. Why are you here? And she looked at me and she started laughing. She goes, "You're right.
Right.
Why am I here?" She got up and she left. And then, of course, all of the Deploy Solutions people were like, "What in the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't need a CEO looking over my shoulder."
Right.
Yeah.
Your entire marketing team's here. But I know all the companies that you've been with. I've had experience, SAP proper and SuccessFactors. But what did you do at?
So I joined them as part of their professional services organization, doing some large-scale global implementations for their recruiting products, and then eventually moved into the product area there. And then when I left, I had been running the recruiting product team organization at that point.
For SAP or SuccessFactors?
For SuccessFactors, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. You crisscross with a bunch of people I know. That's fantastic.
Sure. Tiny world, that HCM world.
It is
getting smaller every day. Wow, that is fantastic. So tell us about the role of your chief product officer.
Yeah.
What do you say you do? Like, what's the job?
So I'm ultimately responsible.
That sounded like he's not going to believe you.
I know.
He's like, just tell us what you think you do. We're going to tell you what you do.
That's a bit from Office Space.
Which you still haven't even introduced me. You totally skipped over me, by the way.
Oh, Ryan. Hey. You.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Meg. Tell us what you do.
So I mean, I'm ultimately responsible for the functionality, the building, the design of all the product feature functionality for Sterling. My team is made up of a bunch of folks associated to building products, also integrating with the vendors and the data providers in which we use to fulfill our services. And so I have product management, designers. I also have a group that reports under me that we had a recent acquisition of a company called Volt Clinic Management Solution. And they're under my purview as well. As we're excited to bring them into the fold to expand our drug and health offering as well.
Smart.
So,
we interviewed them at SHRM.
Oh, did you?
We interviewed them.
We
were doing a podcast from a booth from 23 SHRM in Vegas, and we interviewed them. Loved them. But
Yep.
there was a bunch of those companies that kind of cropped up out of COVID.
Yep.
So they were doing into that remote testing world, and then all of a sudden they just like, wait a minute, there's another world here. We could do remote drug testing. So, but we liked them. That was a really cool interview.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're great.
So the topic, identity verification. So
Yep.
I would assume the way Ryan and I have talked about it in the past is, how do we know you are you?
Yep.
Ish.
Mm-hmm.
Something like, so how do you and your customers look at identity verification?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, just to back up a tiny bit, Sterling is obviously one of the largest global leaders in background screening and identity services. And we are definitely, we believe, kind of cutting edge and leading in that identity service space. We really expanded that offering over the last couple of years, where we started to partner with ID.me in the US, and then Yoti from an international standpoint.
Taylor.
Yes, Taylor. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have what I find fascinating, because I come from the recruiting space. I've been in HCM for a long time, but screening to me was a bit new when I first joined here. And there's a lot of misconceptions on that, the fact that there really is identity verification that's just automatically done with background screening, but it's really not.
No,
you could actually say you are whoever you want to say you are, and unless you can actually verify that information, you're kind of like running these checks on folks that you don't even know if I am Meg Wilson, right? So we've spent quite a bit of time most recently working with our customers, working with our clients to better understand the problems they're trying to solve related to fraud, because there's quite a bit of it nowadays, where you've got people who are trying to get employed and then farming out their job, reselling their job, right? So that's a pretty common thing that's happening.
And that's a COVID remote work thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Well, it's happened before that too.
It did.
There's been a couple of really funny cases prior to COVID, but that's an interesting COVID development for sure.
Yeah, so we've been spending a lot of time in this space, and we, from an innovation standpoint, really thinking, and again, like I said, there's a misconception out there that a lot of people think it's just automatically done, and it's not, right? And so what we wanted to do was make sure we were offering.
Hey, Meg, just sorry, man, I hate interrupting people, but for the audience's edification, do they think that identity verification is just bolted into, like you're doing a background check, and it's just a part of the process? Is that some of the misconception?
I think some of the misconception is that, but also one of the standard services offered is like a Social Security trace check, right?
Right.
So that's a pretty basic check that will be done. And some people just automatically think, well, that's an identity check. And it's not. It's just a check on.
I go by a Social Security number right now. No, that's easy.
Right. So I just think that there's a misconception based upon the fact that I can provide information, and that is proving my identity, versus truly proving my identity through a verification process, through a digital identity process. So I think that's a big piece of it.
So walk me through that process, because I don't think I've ever been, outside of my TSA stuff, I don't think I've ever been identified or verified, I should say, for employment or any. It's always just been, fill this out, run it in, they do a background check, make sure I don't have criminal, I haven't laundered money. But I don't think I've ever, at least I've never been told that I've been verified. What does that actually look like?
So from a U.S. perspective, right, like I said, we partner with ID.me. We've built in that candidate experience right into the process. So as a candidate who is being, or as an applicant that's going through a background screening process, identity being part of the package, we'll kick off that process where you'll either log in with your ID.me account, because ID.me is now, I think they're up to like 124 million verified users in the U.S. Or we'll ask if you want to create an ID.me account and utilize that in order to kind of flow through the process. So it's all seamlessly baked into our experience. You probably wouldn't know the difference necessarily And there's different versions, or we would say levels and tiers of identity verification that that clients can choose to do, right? So you can do it based on document verification, all the way up to having like liveness and showing documents live with a virtual agent, right, in order to verify identity. So there's lots of different tiers and versions that we do offer just based upon what clients are looking for and the security that they want to put in place.
And the customers or the industries that care about this more, I mean, at least kind of the adoption curve, what are those?
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it really applies to almost everybody, right? Where we are seeing
100%.
some pretty major adoption is there's a lot in financial services. There's a lot going on with gig economy right now, obviously,
Oh,
which is really
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's an important piece of, if you've got delivery drivers or even
Yep.
drivers, right?
Oh,
That
yeah.
sort of thing, making sure you know who is behind the wheel there. That those are areas that we're definitely seeing quite a bit of it. I think where we'll continue to see a lot of adoption as the identity kind of innovation continues to grow and we start to move towards the reusable credentials, reusable identities, the ability to store my employment information, my education information, my nursing credentials, all of that. I think we're going to see a lot of really interesting use cases on reusability and how we're going to be able to improve the overall experience and kind
You
of
think
like
that becomes more of a backpack that they take with them?
yeah.
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 So that's similar to like a Gauge score, William. We were
Yep.
talking with Gauge, and they take that with them. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Are there industries that don't really care about this? I know
don't
that's
think there's
probably
one.
not a great question, but
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
No.
I think that's a fair question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's industries that don't necessarily care about it, but I do, like I said, I think there's one. I mean, obviously there's a price associated to it. So,
Sure.
we have to pay for the service. So those that are not really interested in kind of making that additional investment, so there's a
Right.
process, there's a price point there. But like I said, I think it applies to everyone. It's applicable across the board. Where we're seeing Sterling is seeing a lot of great traction is in our tech and business services area, which includes our gig area as well. But again, I think there's more to come. I think we're seeing also trends around the idea of identity monitoring. So continuously monitoring identity, right? And
100%.
just
100%.
pinging and saying, "Oh, hey, can you just like do a selfie real quick or a liveness check with us real quick, just to we make sure, the person who we did employ is the actual person that is
I
doing the
think
work."
that's just smart. I think, what the background screening industry went through just a couple of years ago is that
Mm-hmm.
instead of being a one and done, moving into more of a SaaS model, moving into monitoring
Yep.
in the sense of, well, it's great to do a background check before hire. Great.
Right.
But after the hire, if someone's up on a murder charge, they don't have to tell you.
Exactly.
So being able to, again, manage risk in a more modern way that just says, hey, listen, we're going to go and run all these reports just to make sure that we're still fine. I actually like the fact of doing monitoring, ID monitoring, identification monitoring. So I think it's just smart business. Again, remote. If somebody's there sitting in front of you at an office, okay, and you've already verified their identity. You probably don't have to keep verifying their identity because they're sitting in the office right next to you.
Right.
However, with Flex and even with more remote work and global work, I think it's just good business.
Right. Yep. 100% agree. And the other thing it does do, because if you think about all kinds of different services that we offer, right? So everything from public records crim to drug and health services, everything. If you're starting with verified information to begin with, we've seen, I think it's like an increase of like 45% more criminal records found because we're
Right.
starting with verified data to begin with, right? And that's what our clients are looking for us to do. You're not having fat finger issues. You're starting with all the appropriate or the accurate information to begin with. So your turnaround times are faster. You're able to move through providing those services back. You're able to find more records. The quality is higher. So really, we're doing a lot of educating out in the space right now as well to make sure that we can really explain the benefits of what identity screening can do to improve not just fraud, not just identity services, but really your end-to-end screening
Yeah.
process and program that you're offering.
Dumb
What?
question alert. Oh, go ahead, Finn.
No,
Ryan,
go ahead. Ask the dumb question first.
It's
It'll
definitely
make
a
me
dumb question.
sound
I'll
better.
set you up. I'll set you up so that you can ask a real
I'll
intelligent question.
sound smarter.
No, absolutely. So I had this dream the other day about the genetic testing services like 23andMe and Ancestry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of that data that's DNA specific, right? You are who you are by your DNA, right? Could we tap that from an employee verification standpoint? Do you see a world in which
Yeah.
I know not in Europe, got that.
Yeah.
Check.
Right.
Here in the States, those laws aren't on the books.
Yeah.
Could we actually access, even with permission,
Right.
could we access Ancestry or 23andMe to really verify their identity?
Yeah. I mean, that gets interesting. I think, I don't know. I don't
Interesting
know about
code
that.
for, yes, that was a dumb question. Thanks, William.
How that's going to fit into
yeah,
FCRA
let
rules
me,
and things like
yeah.
that. But
I'm curious because I've got both those accounts.
right.
But what's fascinating is like, would someone open up those accounts if they were up for a murder charge or something like
Mm-hmm.
that? It's like, we have DNA. It's like, well, here's my
They
DNA.
have found criminals that way.
They have
Yep.
found criminals that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
it's just, again, verifying someone's identity. Your DNA doesn't lie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is what you are.
My smarter question, Matt.
Thank you, Ryan. You saved me.
We're gonna bring this
again.
back to the smart people though. So I don't know if you have this number.
Okay.
What percentage or how often are we
Mm-hmm.
finding false people? Like they're just not
Ooh.
verified. They go through the process. You start the process. You're like, okay, we've got one.
Yeah.
How often is that actually happening?
I don't know if I have the exact stat on percentages that I can share with you. It's happening. It's happening. I think it's like, it's probably, a 5 to 8%, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah, it's high. And we've even had it so that we have candidates who have even kind of contested the identity process, where we've actually had to reach out, because we obviously partner very closely with ID.me as part of this process, and bring ID.me in, and they will actually say, "Oh no, this is a fraudulent. Like we've had issues with this person in the past before." So, so we see repeat offenders on this. It's a very, I wouldn't say very common. It is fairly common that you are seeing a rise in fraud, and specifically, like we talked about earlier, around the reselling of opportunities and jobs and tasks, right? To have somebody else do something for me.
I can see that. Especially, I mean, it's going to happen globally, but I could
Yeah.
also see that happening in certain parts of the world
Yeah.
where they take on something and, again, maybe even do the first parts of it, and then they say, you know what?
Yeah.
I can now bring in a team of people, and then they can do these pieces.
Yeah.
And that's one way to collect the check, and I'll just go and collect a bunch of those.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the nice thing, like if we, again, with ID.me, because if somebody has already created an account, they've been flagged, they've been suspended before, right? And our client is using identity as part of their overall package. Then we're also, we're saving them some money too, because we're not going through and processing all these services, right? Because if you can't get through identity, we're not going to go ahead and process the rest of the order that needs to be completed.
Oh, that's smart.
Are there any ethical issues that companies need to be aware of as they're working with different companies or going through identity verification process?
Ethical. We've worked very closely with our compliance team in order to make sure that the services and the offering that we've put together to support identity screening is fair and kind of meets all the regulations that it needs to. So we haven't really had that come up as much of a concern. So I'd say no.
And some of that comes down to communication with the candidate.
Yep.
It's like, this is our process. Because you know recruiting products really well. This is our process. You're going to go through here. You're going to do this. By the way, on a background check, I've seen some companies now move to, you'll get a copy of the background check.
Oh yeah.
Like whatever. Like,
Yep.
we just want you to know that you're going to go through that. So it's getting passive affirmation that, okay, I understand the process. I understand this is what's going to go on.
Right.
And that's the compliance stuff. Obviously, your compliance team's going to keep you compliant.
Right.
But some of it just comes down to communication with the candidate.
Yep, absolutely. And again, if you think about it from a candidate perspective, I mean, I personally, if I'm a candidate, I would love to be able to create a single identity wallet where then I can store my verified information into it, but I could reuse it as many times as I want to and not have to provide it, and type it in and that sort of thing. And so, again, I think that, at least from my perspective, the future of this is, how do we enable the person, right, to be able to take more ownership and control over their data, the reusability of their data? How do we want to think about issuing credentials, right? I'm sure you're familiar with like the Velocity Network and what those folks are doing over there.
Yep.
And so how are we going to all make sure that we're supporting the candidate experience, the client experience, as much as we can to make it as easy as possible to provide this information, almost like with a thumb, right? Share my information or share what is required for me to share in order to go through the process.
Right. How does this get baked into the ATS or people's recruiting technologies? Do they have a report, or does it? You tell us, because you're
Yeah. So today we do quite a bit of reporting with ID.me that they can push back reporting information. We are careful in the reporting and how we are reporting back the status related to identity, right? Because we want to make sure that we're not misleading or giving information that could be made to make a hiring decision so we're very explicit on what we do share and what we don't share as far as like the reporting process goes. That all comes back to us through APIs. We can store that information into our system. And then, as you're probably aware, we have over 75 plus integrations into ATSs across the globe, and we can send back a lot of information, whatever they want us to send back, into that ATS as appropriate. So we're able to do all of that.
So in the hiring process itself, or not so much recruiting, I guess in the hiring process itself, as they go through the verifications, if they come back and there's discrepancies, where does the candidate fall in that? Are these and I guess maybe a better question is, what are the discrepancies that generally come up in identity verification? That's what I'm really interested to understand.
Well, and we use ID.me and we use Yoti to do the identity verification, right? And so in order to actually continue with the process, you have to verify your identity. Otherwise, it stops right there, right? So in order to verify your identity, there's different tiers of information that you have to provide in order to do that. So it's whether or not it's different pieces of documentation that you need to provide. Like I talked about the liveness aspect of it, where you're doing a selfie to make sure like you're a live person, or you're even doing it with a virtual agent in order to confirm that. Those are all the pieces, right? But we don't, if you can't make it through identity, that's where it stops with us. So any reasons that you wouldn't get through identity would be if you can't provide that information that is necessary in order to validate you are who you are, right? And then from there is quite a support model that's in place with ID.me, where candidates can get support in order to kind of continue to move through it. But it's fairly rigid and complex, just to make sure that we talked about bad actors aren't getting through. So they do a really good job of making sure we're really clear on, if somebody's getting stopped, there's a reason for it. right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're gonna make sure that the appropriate information and documentation is shared with us in order to proceed through it.
From a buying questions perspective, or
Mm-hmm.
like when people, if they've never bought this,
Yep.
like identity verification is just new to them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've done screening, for years and years and years. They've used
Right.
Sterling for years and years and years. What should they be asking you that they're not asking?
Yeah. It's a great question. And we start right now. All of our go to market is including identity. So we go in talking to every single client, every single customer with identity first. That's kind of
From
our
Jump Street.
yeah, that's how we start, right? Because again, we share with them this is the increase in quality that we're seeing. This is the increase in your and your satisfaction associated with your candidate experience, right? We believe that this will really improve your overall program that you want to offer. So I know our teams do quite a bit of just client education, like we talked about before, because of the misnomer of, well, we already do that. Like, no, you
Right.
don't actually. So let us explain what we do and how we do it, so that you can now take advantage of it, right? So there's a lot of that we lead in with. But I think it's also important for clients to be asking us, like, how can we, like, learning more about how they can take advantage of some of the real true benefits of identity solutions, right? So the reusability of the information, the improvement in the turnaround time, the quality that you're going to be getting back as well. So I think those are all huge benefits, but Sterling as a whole goes in nowadays with an identity first approach, because we truly believe it's a differentiator and it's going to make sure it's improving your overall program, and improving all of your services, not just identity. The other thing we're also working on right now is how we can decouple identity from some of these services, right? So is there different points in the process where you would want to do a certain level of identity check right up front, right? So maybe it's just a quick basic, Meg Wilson is Meg Wilson. But then once you get further throughout the process, you actually want to do a deeper dive into that identity. And then we talked about the monitoring as well. But being able to kind of pick and choose, coming from the recruiting world, I've always said, like, the ability to apply with ID Me. I think it's like, that would be amazing, right? All my information's in there. All I have to do is click a button and apply with ID Me, apply with Yoti. All my information goes through from application all the way through to the screening process as well.
Right. What are we looking at? The type of company that's bringing in identity verification. Is this, by type of company meaning size of company? Is this an enterprise solution, or, I mean, obviously a 10-person or 15, 20-person company could benefit from this as well. But where do you fall in terms of market? Where are you selling into?
Yeah. Sterling as a whole is generally focused on enterprise. So most of our clients are very large enterprise customers that we sell into. So I'd say that's the bulk of what we're supporting. I like you said, I think it applies to everybody, and it's useful to everybody. But we sell into primarily enterprise organizations.
I love that. So I love that you're leading with identity verification, because again, it gets to the heart of, this person shouldn't even move forward in the process. They shouldn't waste any time in the process, and it should be something that's shortlisted if we can't verify they are who they say they are.
Right.
You brought up something earlier about criminal records. I wanted to get your take on, not all felonies are the same, right?
Right.
There's I think 70 million Americans have felonies or something like that. So, but not all those are the same. Do you see, I mean, the ban the box and all that other stuff that's been going on for years, do you see people with your clients really move? Like, again, understanding that and verifying that. So, first of all, understanding screening, especially if they check the box and all that other stuff, but understanding what that was and then verifying that. Do you see movement in that space at all in terms of hiring convicted felons?
I see. Okay, so like a little more like changes in the structure in the I think we are seeing some, right? I think depending upon the organization, depending upon the industry, depending upon the types of engagement that those employees are having and the audiences in which they're working with, yes, I do think that we are seeing some of that. With the introduction of the continuous monitoring, which we've been doing actually a lot of most recently as well. So the criminal monitoring, MVR monitoring, all those kinds of different services, so that, like you mentioned at the beginning, no one knows what you do after you're hired, which is also kind of a crazy thing. Identity and the fact that no one knows what you do after that's all. It's kind of fascinating when you think about it. So yeah, I do think with the addition of those services and being available, I think we are seeing a little bit of a change there. Yeah, and I think it all honestly just all depends on a lot on the industry and the client.
Yeah. But just a quick follow up. I know there's a reason to decouple those things because customers would like to buy off the Chinese menu of sorts. So I get that.
Yeah.
Do you see a world where screening, monitoring, and verification, they just become synonymous as the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
And it is what it is. This
Right.
is what going forward, this is what you have to do. You got to screen, you got to verify, and you got to monitor.
Yeah. I really do think that's where we're headed. I think in order just to make sure clients are being able to instill that trust and safety within an organization, both to their employees but also to their clients, right? People are going to want to be monitoring. They're going to want to be able to have a confidence in knowing who they're hiring and making sure that their organization is safe, safe for their employees, safe for offering their services. So yeah, I think we're seeing quite a bit there, and I think that is going to start to become some of the norm. As we kind of look to the future.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Go
ahead.
No, go for it. Finish up.
I was gonna go somewhere else, so let's go you.
No, go somewhere else.
Go somewhere else. Well, I'll come back to my question.
The only thing I was gonna say was, the other area we've been doing a lot in, because there has been some change in regulation with I-9 remote verification. We've also partnered with ID.me. So we actually use ID.me's virtual agents now to do the remote inspection of the I-9 documentation. And if you think about how identity pins into all of that, right? So if the client uses identity at the very top of the funnel as part of the screening process, and then once you get to that I-9 process, if you're still using ID.me, right, and the identity process, the I-9 is like, it takes seconds. Yeah, it's like almost done, right? So I think there's just what I wanted to make sure I was kind of pulling out there is, we talked about the monitoring, but there is an entire life cycle, I think, where identity is pulling a lot of these pieces of screening together throughout the entire life cycle of an employee being employed within an organization, from beginning all the way through continuous, potentially to offboarding and even rehire at some point as well, right?
So, Meg, two questions for you, as I know we're coming up on time, but two quick questions. One is, and this is more about the buying process or selling process, I guess. How do you know a company just doesn't get it? Number one. So you're talking to them, you guys are talking to them, you're just like, you guys don't get it. Like, what is that trigger there? And then on the flip side to that is, as you're talking either to them or another company, what part of the conversation do you get to when you realize that most of who become your clients get it? I'm sure a number of them come to you say, we need this, so where do we
That's
sign?
the aha moment. Yeah.
Right, yeah, but where's the aha moment, and where's the ones you're just like, we just shouldn't be talking because you're not ready for this?
Yeah.
And you're going to be out of business next month. So
that's a really nice way of saying that.
Right.
Good.
I think
very polite.
Yeah, I try.
I think that what's interesting is that most organizations, like I said, right, they don't necessarily think they need it. So what our teams are doing when they're going into these opportunities is we are doing a ton of education. So we're doing a lot of education around here is why and what this is going to do to your overall program, right? So there's quite a bit of tailoring that's done to better understand the audience, the program that they're running, the different types of searches and services that they need to do, and how identity will potentially impact that. We're also open to doing, in some instances, we'll do trials. So we'll let them, especially those that have been some of our clients' customers for quite some time, and we would love for them to take a look at identity. Try it. Let's see what happens, right? And let's take a look, and we'll do some deltas and reporting and kind of see, like, okay, what did it look like before? What's it look like now? What's the overall experience, the feedback that you're getting from your candidates at the same time, and then also some from a quality perspective as well. And then, yeah, I mean, there are some that are just like, yeah, no, we're not doing it. I don't want to do it. Just don't want to do it. And, we can still offer them all kinds of other screening services, but, and we will.
Do those companies ever go back and identify their own employees and then realize, ooh, we need to get rid of these 30 people because they've done bad things and they're lying to us?
Right. Potentially.
Am I going down the wrong path here?
No. If they don't believe in it, again, that's the mentality of I just don't want to know, which does happen in recruiting and in HR in particular.
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
Right.
So that is a very real thing in HR.
Yeah.
But them then following up, not using the technology, and them following up and verifying on their own.
Yeah.
No, they just don't want to. They don't want to go down the rabbit hole because they don't want to know.
Yeah. I mean, I could see, I could see bringing this in and running it on my internal employee population if we haven't done it already, especially if we're remote, and just say, hey, here's a new process.
It'd be good to know that data. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be good to know. But then what's the repercussion of that if you find some people? Obviously,
here's the ethical quandary, or here's an ethical quandary though, Ryan. You do that bit and you find out one of your top performers in sales isn't who they say they are. Do you fire them?
Kind of have to, right?
No, you don't kind of have to. You don't at all.
Yeah.
You're trying to make quota. Your CRO is going to tell you, I don't care what their name is. Yeah. I don't care if they're in Taiwan. All I care about is the sale.
Yeah. Or now, go hire that actual person.
No, but see, the thing is that actual person might not be a person. It might be a team.
See, this is the conversation. Meg's like, yeah, you guys would be awful buyers for us.
Yeah.
You are not a good customer.
No. Two things really quickly, Meg, before we go. One is, years ago, background screens were for the employee population, not necessarily VP and above. You can remember a time in which we would say, well, we need to screen all these people. It's like code for not executives. I could see verification being really sticky. A really interesting topic, especially monitoring. So I'm putting those three together because I think they are together. We just don't know it yet. So verification, monitoring, and screening for executives and board members. I can see that becoming really interesting. First of all, it should be done. If it's done for somebody in the front line, it should be done throughout the organization.
Yeah.
However, it hasn't historically been that way. So what's your take there?
Yeah, I mean, I think executive diligence, which we also provide, right, it's a little more of a white glove experience.
Right.
I think I agree with you. I think they absolutely should be part of the standard process, right? I don't think there's any reason not to. I don't think it's not money well spent in order to make sure those folks that are, some of your highest paid employees of the organization and have privy to information at the top of the funnel should be going through that. So yeah, I would say, I think that is like most of our clients that I work with, I'm trying to think, like, obviously you can run different packages based on job profiles and such. Right. But I think a lot of them it's a blanket, right? It's like, no, we're just going to put it in front of everything. We're just going to do it across the board. Yeah. So I think that's what we've been seeing quite a bit of.
With identity fraud, I'll just say it as I think it, because that's how I roll. I would assume that's a male thing more than a female thing.
I don't think I have the data to back
Oh,
it
Meg,
up,
come on. Come on. That's a cop out. I don't have the data. You know that. No, I'm just kidding.
This is politician Meg now.
No, that's very, very well done, Meg. Very, very well
Thank
done. Last question is, as robots become employees and they have employee records and we treat them as employees,
Yep.
do we do the same things? Like, what's the verification or what's the monitoring or what does the screening look like for robots?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that gets really interesting, right? Like verifying that like making sure the robot is who the robot really says they are, where they came
Yeah,
from, what
yeah,
they're doing.
yeah. I mean, it's the same
Yeah,
thing, right? It's
the same
outputs.
thing. Yep.
So if it's outputs, okay, you're trying to verify who's putting those outputs together.
Yeah.
Yes, they're not a human being. They don't have a social security number, but they have an algorithm.
An algorithm. They could be using data for
Yeah,
misuse.
correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Misuse
So
data.
maybe not today.
Yeah, not today.
Yeah.
Maybe not
No.
today, Meg. You don't have to worry about it today. However, coming to a theater near us very quickly.
Yeah, and
Right.
is it working for a competitor as
That's
well
right.
and sharing information? There has to be verification there.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
William's
Yeah,
putting
that
his
is very
hand up to
interesting.
run that division.
Yeah,
He'll
just
send his-
anytime. Just call me.
All right.
I'm
Sounds good.
unemployable, and you don't want to run it. You don't want to run a screen on me. Meg, you've been wonderful. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for carving out some of your time and
Absolutely.
schooling us. This has been wonderful.
Oh, good. Well, thank you
Appreciate it.
for having me. I really appreciate it.